webinar. I'm really excited to be talking about this topic of shifting stress from the heart. And as you know, if you looked at the agenda and overview, we're going to be talking a little bit about heart math technology, but I also want to say that's not the only thing we're going to be talking about. We're going to talk a little bit about biofeedback and what it even is, what it means, the different ways to use it. And most importantly, I just wanted to share with you a little bit about how I'm personally using these types of technologies for myself, but also with my clients, because I have several people who I've been talking to about these types of trainings and how helpful that they can be, that I want to kind of get a quick start to be able to use heart math or something similar to help to shift stress for good. So thanks for being part of this. For those of you who are live, we've got a handful of people here joining me right now, and I know many people who are going to be watching this recording. I was just making a comment that the technology for some reason is acting wacky again, and last week we tried this and had some challenges. And anytime you're talking about stress, you might as well just expect that you're going to have some challenges, because you have to kind of put your money where your mouth is and show up and act like you can handle it. But I was just saying before we got started to Karen, who's also here in San Diego, that I'm blaming the technology glitches on Comic-Con, because there's like 140,000 people on their way here right now to take over our little city. So there's a lot of crazy energy in the space right now, and I'm actually looking forward to walking around and exploring that a little bit this evening with a few people. So Karen, maybe we'll bump into you. I'll send you a note about that. So here we are. Let's talk about the topic. I'm going to keep this pretty short, hopefully about 20 minutes or so. I'll hang on for another 10 minutes if anyone has specific questions for those of you who are with me live. But I just wanted to start with this really quick overview of energy management. And the way I like to teach transforming stress really comes down to getting the brain and the heart aligned, that the brain acts like the CFO of an organization, and it's always assessing how many resources we have at any given moment. And if you can understand that simple framework, then you can understand why sometimes your brain gets hijacked, whether it's by the world around you, by your own internal stories or messages, even by the fact that you didn't get enough sleep or you've gone too long without eating. There's so many potential cues that the brain is constantly picking up on that will determine whether or not you can actually move forward towards your goals. And so it's really important to understand all of these different elements make up your relationship with stress, your demand versus your capacity. And obviously in the Stress Mastery course, we go in a lot more detail about what that means, and you can take assessments to figure it out and fine tune it. But for today, I just want you to understand that the brain is receiving and sending messages to the rest of the body and to even the way that you think based on this demand capacity relationship. The heart, on the other hand, sometimes as an analogy, but in many ways quite literally, acts like the CEO of an organization, and it is more connected to our values, our vision, our mission. And we often think when we need to make important decisions that we want to follow our heart. But even from a scientific perspective, there are neurons that are sensing information in the heart. We have this amazing brain-heart or brain-body connection with communication happening beyond what we even know. There's a study that came out recently that actually discovered that at the base of the brainstem, there's something they're referring to as a breathing pacemaker. And initially, they thought that based on those neurons in the brainstem, it was actually telling the body how to breathe. But it turns out it's actually receiving a signal based on our breath rate as to how to communicate the fear response or potential threat response to the brain to then take action. So there's this really fascinating dynamic between what the heart is feeling and experiencing in our body, or our emotions, our energy and motion in our body, and communicating to the brain that determines how we see the world. And I think that's one of the most fascinating things, is our state or our physiology can dramatically change our mind or our psychology. So we need to get those two different systems aligned, and there's a lot of ways to do that. That's the whole premise of becoming a brain boss is if you want to be in charge of your brain and not be hijacked by the world around you, you want to really learn how to optimize that heart-brain connection. There's a lot of ways to do this. Simply put, what we've been told is the stress response of fight or flight is not quite accurate. And this is what the new neuroscience of stress is teaching us, which is so fascinating, that it's not just fight or flight, first of all. Second of all, it's not really a response in the way we think about it now. That's a reaction. So based on that base of the brainstem, our lizard and monkey brains, they're reacting to a perceived threat in a series of ways. There's actually 6, and now that I think about it, I just altered this. So this is the old slide. This is how fast some of this stuff is changing, by the way. This slide is from last week, and there were 5. And based on my own understanding and a conversation I had with someone recently, I was like, you know what, there's actually 6. So let me explain that. There are 6 primary stress reactions. Reactions are based more on physiology in the body and the base of the brainstem. And when you have a stress reaction, it hijacks your energy, your attention, your resources from having a response. So if you think about the 3 levels of the brain, and I teach this a lot, very simplistic. You have the base of the brain, the lizard brain, the mid-center, the emotional monkey brain, and then you have the top, the human, logical, cortical part of the brain. When we experience stress, it works from the bottom up, meaning it can freeze our energy there and we just get reactive. So we trigger these hormones to help us fight, flight. Okay, that's typically what we think of. We also have another reaction called tend or befriend, which is actually a more nurturing, collaborative reaction that happens primarily with women. But certainly everybody has these different reactions that they rely upon at different times. I said freeze response, and I used to stop it there, and this has to do with, when we really feel paralyzed by something. But it's beyond that, and I feel good adding this 6th component because for me personally, it's huge, and I think more people need to know of this. The freeze response could also be a faint response, and so freeze or faint could be kind of more of a cognitive analysis paralysis where we don't know what to do, or your body could literally shut down and pass out. Now, most people never have that experience, but I think because of how much stimulation we have in our world right now and how much we're spreading ourselves too thin, more people are experiencing this, and I want people to understand that is a reaction of stress. Again, saying that's all happening in the base of the brainstem. These are the reactions. If we want to respond, we have to shift our state to change our mind. That's what I want to talk to you about today. How do you use the heart, the energy of the heart, to get into a more congruent state that will then allow the brain to open up so that you think like a human and not like a lizard or a monkey, okay? Just to have fun with that. Those of you that know me know I've got my monkey mind right here reminding me to lead with my heart. I squeeze him, his heart pops out, lead with my heart, connect with my heart, be curious, be playful, be relaxed, and the brain can come online. But when we get too tight or we try to be too perfect, that's where we get into trouble. So emotion, that's what happens within 1/5 of a second of a state experience when we experience stress. We have an emotion. Energy in motion, non-conscious processing happens within about 1/5 of a second. Then we have a thought that corresponds with that emotion within about 1/2 of a second. So it's happening later. When you sense that there is no safety, whether it's physical safety or emotional safety, whatever it might be, the story you're telling yourself about needing to be perfect, when that happens, you see the rhythm of the heart start to change into this chaotic, incoherent pattern. And that then sends a message to the brain that says you're not safe. And that's whether that's a real threat or it's a perceived threat. So how do we shift into coherence? There's a lot of ways to do this through things like gratitude and appreciation, through humor and play. And these are all different mindsets that we can develop to become stronger to pull us into coherence. But for today, what I want to touch on are the technologies that are available. And so I'm going to skip right through here, get to the point. You shift your state with breathing, moving, getting your circulation going, and paying attention to the heart. Now here is a video that I really like, and I've been using this to do some training. I'm going to just show you these waves. I was kind of hoping if I could, you're going to hear some audio behind this, but essentially what you're seeing here with these waves rolling is it's teaching you to breathe in and out to those waves. So you breathe in as the ball's going up, and you breathe out as the ball is going down. Now this is timed to about 6 breaths per minute, which is about 10 seconds total for each inhale and exhale combined. About 5 seconds in, about 5 seconds out. I'm going to pause this for just a moment here, only for sake of time because I want this to be really short. I have that posted on my YouTube channel if you want to see it, or I can post the link here for you as well. But essentially that's one training tool that you can use, and you just watch the moving ball, you listen to the sounds of the waves. If you want to do that, I prefer to close my eyes because I don't like the motion, but you want to find what it is that's going to work for you. So those are super simple little shifts that you do. That breathing rate, by the way, new studies have shown that even spaced of 5-5 is ideal, more so than what we've been taught sometimes with maybe breathing into 4 and out to 6. But realistically, you just want to settle into a natural, calm breath rate. What the technology does is it helps us to be coached, in a sense, into how to do it right. So whether it's a video like this or binaural beats that you're listening to or sounds of nature, all of those things help to shift us into a more coherent state by starting to slow down the breathing, starting to slow down the heart rate. And that's the first step, is really getting into that calm state. Now, we can use the heart even more powerfully by then embracing some sort of positive emotion, by thinking about something or someone we feel grateful for and staying in that space for a while. That actually starts to create a chemical change of, I think it's over like 1,200 different biochemical responses that shift from breaking us down to building us back up again. Now, what can be difficult about that is if you're trying to do that by yourself and walk through those steps, it can be hard. But if you're listening to guided meditation, or if you're listening to music, or if you're listening to sounds of nature, that will start to happen for you. What the states are you're shifting through here are to breathe and allow that to get into a natural state, to feel a positive emotion and allow yourself to settle into that. And then, if you want, to the next step, to focus on where you would like to go. So this is kind of that final step of you breathe, you feel a positive emotion, and now you ask yourself a question. This is where curiosity comes in. How do I want to show up? Who do I want to be? What's most important to me? You start to focus the top of the brain. So we're literally working from the bottom of the brain, from the brain stem, to calm the brain. We then cue with a positive emotion, that mid-center of the brain, and then we control our thought process. Once we've got the energy we need, essentially we've got the juices flowing in the brain, we now take control and say, here's how I want to be, here's how I want to show up. So what then is the technology aspect of that, and why I wanted to include HeartMath as an example, is there are devices that you can use, and I'm going to pull out an M-Wave. It's one of two options I love about HeartMath, and there's different reasons I like both, so I'm going to tell you what those reasons are. But essentially, you just take a sensor, you pop it on your ear, you turn it on here, super easy, hit the on button. Super easy, I say, as I realized I didn't charge this since I did it last week. So it's easy, but it's not going to work. So let me tell you what you would see if I had charged the battery. Well, it's hard to see anyway through this, but essentially what's happening, you turn it on, and you're going to see lights light up and down here on the breath bar. So similar to what we saw with that moving ball, with the breath bar, it's teaching you how to inhale and how to exhale. And so you can set it so that there's a tone that goes on and off as that bar goes up and down, or no tone if you want to just watch it. You then have an indicator light that's going to show you green, blue, or red. So green when you're in that optimal coherent, blue when you're kind of in the middle, and red when you're not there. Last week when I was doing this and I had this, it was red almost the whole time. What was funny is I left it on, and as people were making comments and we were having a discussion without even trying, I was getting so encouraged by the discussion that it turned green. Now that's some of the fun stuff I feel like the technology can show us is it just brings more awareness to the state we're in, and it gives us that positive reinforcement that when we're doing the techniques and the practices, it is working. Now, just to explain quickly what it's measuring, it's not measuring your heart rate as a static heart rate. It's measuring what's called heart rate variability, which is the beat to beat change of the heart. So if we go back and see that slide I showed here, when you're looking at heart rhythms, it's the beat to beat change. So that coherent state, there's different heart rates within that. It just means that you're adapting in an effective, efficient way versus the crazy chaotic, which is going to make this thing go red. Now, the other thing is there's different tones. This is where it gets way beyond my knowledge, but I find it fascinating is the tones for when it's red are not as pleasant than the tones when it's green. Now, you wouldn't naturally pick that up because they're so subtle, but this is how brilliant the people are that put this together. Is there are certain tones that are pleasant, just like certain colors and certain movements that we naturally find pleasant to the brain. And when that happens, it triggers the release of dopamine, it strengthens those neural connections, so we start to hardwire those habits. That's why technology is so helpful. Now, another one is their Inner Balance program, which I have been using more personally than M-Wave. I like M-Wave because you can actually take it on the plane with you and you don't have to have it connected to any technology. You can do that with Inner Balance as well. The Inner Balance program has a lot more interesting feedback, meaning that there's a coherence coach. You can watch different visuals, different audios. There's some fun stuff like when you're coherent, certain images will turn color instead of black and white. And that's where we start to get into what's called neurofeedback. So biofeedback is just giving you feedback on your biology. So this is a biofeedback device because it's telling you your heart rate variability. Neurofeedback is when you're getting some shifts, you're getting some sort of feedback about the state of your brain, but it's also giving you neural feedback, which sounds crazy, but most of the time you don't even know that you're getting the feedback. So when you're doing Inner Balance, for example, and they have a new Bluetooth version, which makes me so happy because it works with iPhone and Android, so you can get one product and it works for all your devices, your iPad too. So it's got a Bluetooth version, and so you're doing this, and as the colors are coming about, it's telling your brain, good job. And that may seem really simple, but that's what we need to nudge those neurons to keep firing and start creating those neural networks and patterns that create those habits. And so I wanted to share this because it's so simple, and so simple, in fact, that some people are like, well, I don't see the point. I could just do deep breathing, or I could just do meditation without it. And so if you're already doing that, then I would say, great. But if you're not, why not? For a lot of people, it's helpful to get that feedback because you know that you're doing something and you're in that ideal zone. There are other technologies. There's more coming out all the time, so I don't want to make it sound like this is the only one. This just happens to be the one that I believe has been the most consistent and the most helpful for me. So a couple other quick things, and if you have questions, I want you to start typing those in the chat box now if you're with me live. And if you're watching this later, you can certainly post your questions on the comment section below, and I'll be able to respond to you there. So how do you do this to really become a brain boss? You incorporate this in what I call your prime time sessions. You prime your brain to be in an optimal state when it matters most. So your morning prime time, you could use this technology to get to that calm state and prime your brain to be showing up more optimally with better energy throughout the day. That's your proactive, I'm going to anchor myself, I'm going to anchor my energy in this positive, beautiful brain, connecting with my heart and actually moving towards what matters and not getting hijacked. Now, the world is still going to try to hijack your attention because it's chaotic and it's stimulating and it's hard to keep up. So recharging is going to be important throughout the day, setting aside 3 to 5 minutes to do something like this or listen to a prime time guided meditation. And there's several of them that'll be posted on the YouTube channel as well. So 3 to 5 minute shifts especially anytime it matters. So maybe you don't do it every hour, but you have an important meeting, or you have an important phone call, or you're transitioning from being at work to being at home. Anytime your energy needs to shift, then you need to prime your brain and shift your state by using some sort of technique to do that. Breathing, feeling, focusing, using technology if it's helpful. And then before bed, and you may or may not want to use the technology before bed. The more you do this, the less you actually need the monitor to tell you when you're doing it well, because you'll just know. But before you go to bed, have some sort of evening ritual that primes your brain to be able to sleep more effectively and efficiently. So important. And if you can do that and shift your brain into an optimal state, thinking about what you're grateful for that happened today, thinking about those impactful moments that you had today, you will actually wake up with a better lens through which to experience your life. The more you do that, the more you're the boss of your own brain. You're creating the lens you want to see the world in a way that's going to be most helpful. Doesn't mean you don't have stress. It just means that when it happens, you're able to tolerate it and you're able to adapt more quickly and more effectively. So I really hope that was helpful. I would love to take a couple questions if anyone has some. Certainly don't have to. If you're watching this later, you can post those in the comment section below. But I see a couple of things here. Reviewing the 3 steps, absolutely. Calming brain, emotion, and thought. Yes, so the brain recharge process is exactly what's happening. So what you're doing is you're focusing on breathe, feel, focus. And Karen, I think you've heard me say this before. I just remember it as BFF, like best friends forever. So BFF, breathe, feel, focus. So I'm going to focus on my breath, just noticing it. For me, I like to close my eyes. I still like to have the technology connected because I can either hear it and listen to the tones, or from time to time, I'll just kind of open my eye and I'll look down, I'll see the green. I'm like, yes, doing it right, close my eyes. I'm very sensitive to stimulation, especially visual. So for me, I'd rather close my eyes, but other people like that immediate feedback. They like to watch the monitor. You can also get it for your computer and be watching that as you're training. So you're breathing, slowing down that breath rate, about 6 breaths per minute. The technology will show you exactly how to breathe in and breathe out. Then you're shifting to a place of gratitude, appreciation, curiosity, humor, playfulness, whatever positive emotion that you can connect with your heart. And the heart is now going to start sending that warm, positive energy to the brain to release the emotional center. And then from that place, you go to curiosity or focus. What do I want to focus on? How do I want to show up? So if you look at the tertiary brain as being those 3 levels, you basically have sensing, feeling, and focusing. So sensing is what needs to calm down. Feeling is what needs to be cued into a positive direction. And then focusing is what needs to be controlled. So it's calm, cue, control. I've got all of these different ways of, for me, simplifying it, but I don't want to confuse everybody on that. So you've got the different brain levels, you've got the different capacities that they're working on, and then you have these different strategies to really help tune those into a frequency that's going to move you in the right direction. So with that, because I don't see any more questions, and I said I was going to try to keep this to about 20 minutes, we will make that a wrap. Let me just pull up here some additional resources for you if you'd like them. My website's there at the bottom. That's kind of weird, HeidiHanna.com, but you can also go to Recharge Toolkit and get some free guided audio, guided meditation, relaxing music, and funny video clips. And you can also go to my Stress 360 and get a free Stress 360 assessment that will give you a little bit better understanding of your relationship with stress. Finally, I want to plug our session next month. So I am going to be doing these monthly, these Stress Mastery free webinars. Next month, we have a very special guest, and she happens to be with us right now, Karen Buxman. We are going to be talking about how to use humor to be a brain boss. So strategically, how can you implement more humor into your day? We'll be talking about those 3 different parts of the brain and how humor, trust me, you've probably heard me speak on humor before. If you're here, you know me pretty well, but one of my favorite topics, and it's so powerful, but we don't want to just use it theoretically, like, yeah, we know laughter is the best medicine. We want to get practical, tactical. Okay, I get it, I understand there's all these benefits, but how do I use more humor, especially if I'm not funny? And so I'll give a little teaser with this. Something I learned from my humor buddy, Karen Buxman, is it is not about being funny, but seeing funny. So how do you train the lens through which you see the world to be one that appreciates humor? And we'll talk about that. It's going to be on Friday, August. I can't remember what month it is sometimes. August 11th, Friday, August 11th at 12 o'clock. And I will post that link here pretty soon so that you can start signing up for that. And I want to thank you again. Thanks for being here, you guys. If you have any additional questions, let me know. I'll also post a link to the HeartMath technology if you want to check it out. And if you're interested in doing a one-on-one coaching session around the technology, feel free to reach out to me on that as well. I know some great coaches that actually can walk you through getting this set up and helping to hold you accountable, which I know can be very powerful. If you're really going to take this seriously, you want to be checking in with somebody on a regular basis. So I encourage you. I send you lots of love. Have a beautiful day today. Don't forget to be the boss of your own brain by connecting to your heart on a regular basis. Okay, with that, I'm going to say bye. Thanks, everyone.